Dear listeners, a new day and a new story to discuss. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that interests me. Listen and write down what you think about this situation. I'm interested in your opinions. The sun hadn't even dared to peek above the horizon when my alarm shattered the silence of our bedroom. I groaned, a sound drowned out by the mechanical buzzing that, for a moment, felt like the most significant adversary of my peace. Yet, as I reached out to silence the alarm, a gentle hand caught mine. Elizabeth's touch, a familiar warmth in the cold morning air, pulled me back into the bed's embrace. "Just 5 more minutes," she murmured, her voice laced with a sleepiness that made my heart swell. It's funny, isn't it? How those simple moments feel like they could stretch into eternity, a bubble where the chaos of the outside world can't reach you. I indulged in the illusion, allowing myself a few more moments of peace before reality beckoned. The ritual of our mornings unfolded with the comfort of routine. Elizabeth, with the grace of a dance learned over years, slid out of bed to start the coffee, while I braced against the cold tiles of the shower. Our home came to life with the smell of brewing coffee and the sound of sizzling bacon, each a testament to the life we had built together. Over breakfast, we shared plans for the day, a mundane yet intimate exchange. I was thinking loaf and baked potatoes for dinner, Elizabeth suggested, her eyes lighting up at the thought. "I'll grab some fresh French bread on my way back," I replied, already looking forward to it. "Maybe a pecan pie, too." "You're going to spoil me," she teased, a playful smile tugging at her lips. "There's no one else I'd rather spoil," I said, and I meant it. We shared a kiss, a promise of more to come, before reality intruded in the form of our daily responsibilities. The drive to work was uneventful, the city still rubbing sleep from its eyes. It wasn't until later, amidst the clatter of keyboards and the low hum of office life, that my world tilted on its axis. Harry, my boss, called me into his office with a look of urgency I hadn't seen before. The news he shared wasn't just a ripple in the pond. It was a storm that threatened to pull me under. "There's been trouble in the St. Louis office," he began, his words heavy with the weight of unspoken conflict. "I need you to fly out there by 2:20 p.m. My mind raced, tallying the logistics and the impact of this sudden trip. Yet, it was the call I attempted to make to Elizabeth, to inform her of my plans, that truly set the stage for my unraveling. Her secretary's words, "she's in a meeting," seemed innocuous enough, but the seed of doubt was planted. Returning home to pack, I found Elizabeth's car in the driveway, a silent sentinel to the betrayal I was about to uncover. The trail of clothing leading to our bedroom spoke louder than any words of denial could. My heart raced, a cacophony of emotions warring within me as I ascended the stairs. The scene I stumbled upon in our bedroom, my Elizabeth entwined with a stranger, was a betrayal so profound it threatened to suffocate me. My presence, initially unnoticed, became the catalyst for a confrontation I had never anticipated. "I'm here to pack a bag," I announced, my voice a mask of indifference that belied the turmoil within. The attempt to maintain normalcy was futile, the air charged with a tension that words could barely navigate. Elizabeth's pleas for understanding, for a chance to explain, fell on deaf ears. My heart had turned to stone, every word from her lips a further indictment of the life I thought we had. I left without a backward glance, the door closing behind me a symbol of the finality of the moment. The drive to the airport was a blur, my thoughts a whirlwind of betrayal, hurt, and unanswered questions. How could this have happened? Where had I gone wrong? The solidity of our relationship, the foundation I had thought unshakable, had crumbled beneath the weight of her infidelity. The normalcy of our morning, the shared laughter and plans for dinner, now felt like a cruel joke. A performance by Elizabeth, while behind the curtain, she harbored secrets that would tear our world apart. I couldn't help but wonder, as the city passed by in a haze, what other lies had been hidden behind her smile. You know, they say the moment you think you have life figured out is exactly when it proves you wrong. I used to scoff at that, thinking I was the exception. Elizabeth and I, we had something special, or so I believed. But sitting in that sterile airport lounge, waiting for a flight to a city I had no desire to visit, I couldn't help but replay the morning's revelation over and over in my mind. The betrayal wasn't just a wound, it was an unraveling of the fabric of my reality. The flight was a blur, the kind where you're physically present but your mind is miles away, tangled in the mess your life has become. The moment we hit the tarmac in St. Louis, my phone lit up, a message from Harry, my boss. "Hope the trip goes smooth. Let me know if you need anything." If only he knew the chaos I was stepping into wasn't just about work. My first stop wasn't the office, but a dingy bar near the hotel where I was staying. I needed a moment, you know? A moment to gather my thoughts, to brace myself for the confrontation ahead. The bartender, a guy with too many tattoos and not enough smiles, slid a whiskey across the counter without a word. He must have seen that look before, the one of a man grappling with ghosts. As the liquid fire burned down my throat, I made a decision. Elizabeth's betrayal wasn't going to be the end of my story. It was going to be the start of her downfall. Call it vindictive, call it petty, but in that moment, it was all I had. My plan was simple: expose the affair, not just to salve my wounded pride, but to dismantle the life she thought she could have without me. The next morning, I headed to our company's St. Louis office, my resolve as cold and hard as the steel of the city skyline. But before I could even step foot inside, my phone rang. It was Elizabeth. Her voice, once my solace, now grated against my nerves. "Michael, please, we need to talk," she pleaded, the desperation palpable even through the digital connection. "There's nothing left to say," I replied, my voice as steady as I could muster. "You don't understand. It's not what it looks like," she continued, a familiar refrain that couldn't erase the images seared into my memory. I saw enough. I cut her off, ending the call with a finality that felt like slamming a door shut on the past. The work issue that had brought me to St. Louis turned out to be a mess of misunderstandings and miscommunications, easily resolved once cooler heads prevailed. Irony wasn't lost on me. If only my personal life could be fixed with a few well-placed words and some strategic thinking. But the real work began once the office was sorted. I spent my evenings in the hotel room, plotting, not against our St. Louis branch, but against the woman who had shared my bed, my life, and then decided that wasn't enough. My plans were meticulous, a reflection of the years I'd spent climbing the corporate ladder. If Elizabeth thought she could play me for a fool, she was in for a rude awakening. I reached out to Lucas' wife, a woman scorned just as deeply as I was. Her initial disbelief turned to rage as the pieces fell into place. "How could he?" She gasped over the phone, her voice a mix of anger and heartbreak. "How indeed?" I mused, the bitterness in my voice mirroring hers. We formed an unlikely alliance, two betrayed spouses united in our desire for retribution. The plan was simple: expose both Elizabeth and Lucas, not just to our small circle, but to everyone they held dear. Let them feel a fraction of the humiliation and pain they'd inflicted on us. As I laid the groundwork for their downfall, a part of me wondered if this was the right path. But then I remembered Elizabeth's laughter that morning, the way she looked at me as if I were the only man in the world. It was all a lie, a performance worthy of an award. My heart hardened once more, my resolve crystallizing with it. The unraveling of my marriage was not just a personal tragedy, it was the catalyst for a reckoning. Elizabeth and Lucas had chosen their fates the moment they decided to betray those who loved them. I was merely the instrument of their undoing. And as I boarded the flight back home, I knew the storm was just beginning. Returning home felt like walking into a storm, each step heavier than the last, laden with a mix of dread and determination. The plan was set, the wheels in motion, but facing Elizabeth, confronting her with the truth and the fallout, that was a tempest I wasn't sure I was ready for. Yet, there I was, standing at the front door, the key turning in the lock almost echoing in the silence of my resolve. The house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that screams in your ears. I found Elizabeth in the living room, her posture rigid, as if she'd been waiting for the guillotine to fall. The moment she saw me, her face crumbled, a mixture of fear and something that looked painfully like hope. "Michael, thank God you're back," she started, rising to her feet, her voice trembling. "We need to talk." I couldn't help but laugh, a sound so bitter it startled even me. "Talk? Is that what you call it now?" My words were sharp, a knife slicing through the pretense. "Please, just listen to me," she pleaded, her eyes welling with tears. "It's not what you think. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. A mistake." I echoed, incredulous. "Is that what we're calling betrayal these days?" "I know I've hurt you, more than words can say," she continued, her voice breaking. "But it meant nothing. I swear it meant nothing." "Nothing?" The word hung between us, a chasm too wide to bridge. "You destroyed everything for nothing?" The room was charged with a palpable tension, a silent battlefield where words were weapons and the truth was a casualty. Elizabeth reached out, a desperate gesture to bridge the distance, but I recoiled, her touch now foreign and unwelcome. "It was only once," she confessed, a sob choking her words. "A moment of weakness, and I've regretted it every second since." "Regret?" I spat the word out, venom tainting my tone. "Your regret changes nothing. It doesn't erase the betrayal, the lies, the pain." I know," she sobbed, collapsing onto the sofa, her body racked with the weight of her confession. But I'm begging you, Michael, please. Can we not try to work through this? Can't we find a way to move past it? Move past it. The idea was laughable, a cruel joke in the wake of devastation. How can I move past this, Elizabeth? How can I trust anything you say, anything you feel? I'll do anything, Michael, she pleaded, desperation lacing her words. Anything to make this right. Anything. I mused, the word rolling off my tongue like a challenge. You've already done enough. The air between us was thick with unspoken words and shattered trust, a chasm too deep to navigate. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was an acknowledgement of the irrevocable change in the landscape of our relationship. The woman before me, with her tear-streaked face and pleading eyes, was a stranger. The Elizabeth the first knew, the Elizabeth the first loved, had vanished, leaving behind a specter of betrayal. I'm sorry, Elizabeth, I said, my voice hollow. But sorry doesn't rebuild what's been broken. It doesn't erase the images that haunt me, the doubts that suffocate me. With those words, I turned and walked away, leaving her sobs echoing in the emptiness of the house that was no longer a home. The confrontation was over, but the confession, her admission of guilt, was a hollow victory. It offered no solace, no closure, only the bitter taste of revenge yet to come. The battle lines were drawn, not just between Elizabeth and me, but within myself. The man who walked out of that house was changed, irrevocably altered by the revelations of betrayal. The path ahead was uncertain, the destination unknown, but one thing was clear. The journey back to myself, to some semblance of peace, was going to be a long and solitary one. I've never been one to dwell on the concept of revenge. It always seemed like a waste of energy, a distraction from moving forward. But there's something about betrayal, about being scorned by the one person who was supposed to stand by you, that ignites a fire within. It's not just about the act itself, but the shattering of trust, the absolute demolition of the life you thought you had. And so, in the quiet aftermath of confrontation and confession, a plan began to take shape in my mind. Not out of a desire for retribution, per se, but as a means to reclaim some semblance of control over my spiraling life. The plan was simple in its cruelty, intricate in its execution. Elizabeth had laid bare her sin, confessed to her betrayal as if words could mend a gaping wound left in their wake. But apologies, I realized, were just the prelude to accountability. And accountability required a stage grander than the confines of our shattered home. You see, revenge is a dish best served cold, and I had all the ingredients for a banquet. The first step was isolation, cutting off Elizabeth from the comforts and alliances she'd taken for granted. It started with whispers, insinuations dropped casually into conversations with mutual friends, painting her not as the victim of a momentary lapse but as the architect of her own downfall. Can you believe it? I'd say, a feigned shock masking the calculation in my tone. After all we've been through, Elizabeth decided that wasn't enough. It's heartbreaking, really. The seeds of doubt took root, sprouting a thorny thicket around Elizabeth, each barb a reminder of the consequences of her actions. Friends began to withdraw, their sympathy for her plight wilting under the harsh light of judgment I cast. Next came her professional life. Elizabeth took pride in her career, a realm where she felt untouchable. But the foundation of her success was, in part, built upon the illusion of our perfect life. I began to dismantle that illusion, reaching out to colleagues and clients under the guise of a grieving husband seeking solace. My story was a potent mix of truth and manipulation, a narrative that painted Elizabeth not as a dedicated professional but as a woman whose personal life bled toxicity into her work. I just think it's important you know who you're dealing with, I'd confide. The subtext clear. Elizabeth was no longer reliable, no longer worthy of trust. But the piece to resistance was yet to come. Elizabeth cherished her relationship with her family, a bond one intended to strain to its breaking point. I arranged a meeting with her parents, a somber affair where I laid bare the details of Elizabeth's infidelity, not sparing them the pain it had caused me. Their reaction was a mix of disbelief and horror, a reflection of the impeccable image of Elizabeth that I shattered with calculated precision. I just thought you should know, given everything, I concluded, my words laced with a sorrow that belied the satisfaction I felt watching the foundations of Elizabeth's world crumble. As I executed each step of my plan, I couldn't ignore the nagging voice in the back of my mind questioning the morality of my actions. Was I any better than Elizabeth, orchestrating the downfall of the person I once loved over a transgression she regretted? The answer was a complexity I wasn't ready to confront. I was too far down the path of vengeance, too consumed by the need to see Elizabeth face the consequences of her betrayal. Revenge, I realized, was a double-edged sword, cutting both ways. With each action taken against Elizabeth, I felt a piece of myself erode, a part of my soul blacken under the weight of my own deceit and malice. But the course was set, the die cast. I was a man consumed, driven not by the desire for reconciliation but by the need to see Elizabeth suffer as I had. The irony of it all was not lost on me. In seeking revenge, I had become a mirror image of the betrayal I sought to punish. But there was no turning back. The plan was in motion, a testament to the dark places the human heart can go when pushed beyond its limits. In the aftermath of my calculated crusade against Elizabeth, the world I knew became a landscape of ruin. It was as if I had detonated a bomb, destroying not just the target of my vengeance, but everything else within reach. The fallout was immediate and unforgiving, a stark reminder that actions have consequences, often far-reaching and unforeseen. I had anticipated satisfaction, a sense of justice served cold and merciless. Yet, as I watched Elizabeth's life crumble under the weight of my machinations, a hollow emptiness took root in my chest. It was a victory, if it could be called that, devoid of any sweetness. The friends who once filled our home with laughter and warmth turned their backs, not just on Elizabeth, but on me as well. Their judgment was silent but palpable, a barrier as insurmountable as the walls of Jericho. How could you? Their eyes seemed to ask, a question I had no answer for. Elizabeth's professional life, once a beacon of her success and independence, withered under the scrutiny and whispers. Her career, which had soared on the wings of her hard work and dedication, plummeted as colleagues distanced themselves, wary of the drama that now enveloped her. Her family, those pillars of support and love, were caught in the crossfire. The anguish in her parents' eyes was a reflection of my own guilt, a mirror I couldn't bear to look into. Their disappointment was not just directed at Elizabeth for her betrayal, but at me for my ruthlessness in exposing it. "I thought you loved her," her father said to me one day, his voice heavy with unspoken accusations. Was there truly no room for forgiveness? His question pierced the armor I had built around my heart, a reminder of the man I once was. A man capable of compassion and understanding, now lost in the shadow of retribution. The solitude that followed was profound, an isolation born not from physical absence, but from the realization that I had become anathema to those who once cared. The silence of the house was a constant echo of the life that had been, a life I had systematically dismantled in my quest for revenge. And then there was Elizabeth, the woman who had shared my life, my dreams, and my bed, now a stranger navigating the wreckage I had wrought. Our encounters were infrequent, accidental brushstrokes of fate that painted a picture of awkwardness and regret. "Michael, look at us," she said during one such encounter, her voice a whisper of its former self. "What have we become?" Her question hung in the air, unanswered. For what could I say? That in seeking to punish her, I had lost myself? That the man who had once loved her unconditionally now stared back from the mirror with cold, unfamiliar eyes? The realization that I had not only destroyed Elizabeth but also the essence of who I was a bitter pill to swallow. Revenge, I had learned, was a poison that corroded the vessel that carried it. In the stillness of the night, as I lay awake in the bed we once shared, the magnitude of my actions weighed heavily on my soul. The silence was a relentless accuser, a reminder that in my quest to inflict pain, I had torn asunder not just Elizabeth's world but my own. The fallout was a testament to the destructive power of vengeance, a landscape of emotional devastation from which there was no return. In seeking to avenge my broken heart, I had shattered everything I held dear, leaving only rubble in my wake. In the silence of the aftermath, the echoes of my actions reverberate through the empty halls of what used to be a home filled with love and laughter. Now, it stands as a mausoleum to my vengeance, each room a grave for memories I once cherished. The path of retribution I chose left nothing but scorched earth in its wake, and standing amidst the ruins, I'm forced to confront the price of my vendetta. I won't lie to you, the journey here was as isolating as it was illuminating. The solitude forced upon me wasn't just a consequence of the fallout, but a necessary crucible for reflection. In the quiet, with nothing but my thoughts for company, I began to see the contours of my own culpability and the tragedy that unfolded. Was it worth it? This question became my constant companion, a ghost whispering doubts in my ear. The truth, as bitter as the question itself, was no. The satisfaction I imagined revenge would bring was as fleeting as shadows at dusk, leaving only emptiness in its stead. Elizabeth reached out, somewhere along the solitary path. Her voice, once the harbinger of betrayal, now carried a different weight. "Michael, we can't undo what's been done," she said, a tremor of vulnerability in her tone. "But maybe, just maybe, we can find a way forward, not together, but apart. Not as enemies, but not as strangers." Her words, unexpected as they were, didn't bring the closure I thought I sought. Instead, they opened a new chapter of introspection. Forgiveness wasn't a gift I was ready to give, not yet, but the possibility of it, like the first light of dawn, began to chase away the shadows of my resentment. In this newfound clarity, I saw the futility of clinging to the ashes of the past. My vendetta, while born from a place of hurt, had only served to perpetuate the cycle of pain. It was a lesson learned in the harshest of ways, a testament to the destructive power of unchecked anger and revenge. The resolution, when it came, wasn't marked by grand gestures or declarations. It was found in the small, quiet decision to start rebuilding, not the life I lost, but the person I wanted to be. The process was slow, a painstaking excavation of the ruins to find the foundation upon which to build anew. In the end, the reflection this journey forced upon me was a mirror held up to the darkest parts of my soul. What I saw was a man changed, not just by the actions of another, but by his own choices in the face of betrayal. Moving forward, I realized, isn't about forgetting or even forgiving. It's about accepting the past, learning from it, and making the choice to walk a different path. So here I stand, at the precipice of a future unburdened by the chains of vengeance. The road ahead is uncertain, fraught with the challenges of healing and growth. But it's a road I choose to walk with eyes open, heart still healing, but soul cautiously optimistic. The fallout of my actions will forever be a part of my story, a stark reminder of the cost of vengeance. But in its aftermath, I found the first steps towards something resembling peace. Not the peace of resolution between Elizabeth and me, but an internal peace, a truce with the parts of myself I lost along the way. As for you, dear reader, I leave you with this. Revenge may promise satisfaction, but its price is the very essence of our humanity. Choose a different path, one paved with understanding, empathy, and the courage to face the pain without succumbing to the darkness it can breed. In the end, the journey of healing, though lonely and arduous, leads to a destination far more rewarding than any revenge could ever offer.